Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Spirit of Texas Author Spotlight. I'm Lauren Scott, Chair of the Spirit of Texas Reading List Committee, and today we are excited to welcome 2023 Spirit of Texas honoree Elle, author of the middle grade novel A Taste of Magic. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you.
We are excited to have you today. And first, I'm going to read your biography so that our viewers at home and our listeners have a little bit of background about you. So, JL is the New York Times best-selling author of young adult and middle grade fantasy fiction and an NAACP Image Award nominee for outstanding literary work for youth and teens. The former educator credits her nomadic lifestyle and humble inner city beginnings as inspiration for her novels. When she's not writing, Elle can be found on the hunt for new desserts without chocolate, looking for literally any excuse to get dressed up, and road tripping her way across the country with her two dogs in tow. I love that. I was expecting a tiara today.
Normally.
Well, awesome. And we're so happy to have you, Jay. We're going to hop right into our questions. And the first one's super simple. Some of our viewers may not have read A Taste for Magic yet, which is a fantastic middle grade novel. So, would you mind telling us a little bit about this book?
Sure. So A Taste of Magic is it follows Kiana, who is 12 years old. She's I believe in sixth grade, and she lives in an inner city community. She goes to just sort of her local public school, middle school. And she learns on her 12th birthday that she is a witch and she has to enroll in mandatory Saturday magic school every weekend. And she can't tell her best friend, who is not a witch. And so it follows just the excitement and fun of that process, like learning you're a witch and enrolling in a magic school in the back of a hair salon, no less. And then she ends up getting news that the school has to be shut down due to some funding issues in the neighborhood and just some redrawn lines on a city map. And so that really puts her in a position to decide if she thinks that she can help save her school, and hijinks ensue. So
That's a great summary. I love that. Um, the first impression of this book is its cover, as it is with every book, and this is such a fantastic cover. It's so fun, and I know I have like weird lighting things going on, but you get to see a little bit in the background, like the potions and the books, and you see the light coming around the door. Now, I'm always curious, how much input do you have on the design, and what was your first thought when you saw Kiana here on the cover?
my first thought was, oh my gosh, you look like my 8-year-old. If you were to see a picture of my 8-year-old, Kiana on the cover looks a lot like her. Um, but actually, I would say it was a pretty collaborative process. You know, authors don't always get a say in covers, but we were able to consult and collaborate on this one. I knew that I wanted Kiana to be in the hair salon, in the on the cover, and I knew I wanted the magic to sort of be around her. And that door in the background is like, if you were to imagine she's standing in the hair salon with the door glowing behind her on that cover is the entrance to the magic school. So that was actually my editor's brilliant idea. But it was just a lot of fun to collaborate on it. I helped with more of sort of the colors. Like I really wanted it to pop on a bookshelf because there's so many books on shelves and I wanted it to have really fun colors. So like the hot pink shirt and the really, really rich blues and the swirls of sparkly magic. That was more where I chimed in. But yeah, they had a great team. And the cover, which I know we'll talk about later, but the cover for the sequel is just as magnificent.
Oh, good, because that is a question coming up here in a little bit because we're all chomping at the bit to see what Kiana's next adventures will be.
I'm
Ooh.
excited. It's a lot of fun. I'm actually unveiling the cover tomorrow.
What? Well, that is very exciting. Now I have something to look forward to. I love that. Well, it is a great cover. And middle grade YA readers look at the cover and they go, or yes. And this one is definitely one that draws your attention. Like you said, you see all the magic and the door behind her. And once you read the story, and you know a little bit more about her, like this is exactly how I envision her to be. So that's funny that she turned out to look just like your daughter. I love
Just
that.
like my daughter. So funny.
That is so cute. Okay, so I want to talk about in your acknowledgments, you give a really, I love reading author acknowledgments because you get such a great picture of where the story was coming from. And yours is very closely tied to your personal life. Um, You talk about your own very special, very wonderful Meemaw, who is the basis of Meemaw, who's an incredibly important character in this book, and who inspired the story and the recipes. Which, by the way, I love that you included the recipes in the back. Those chocolate cake brownies, I've made those, and they're fantastic. So, for all our viewers, if
Aw.
you pick this up, there's some great recipes in the back too. But I know sometimes that's a challenge when it's your own personal story. So did it make it easier or did it make it harder when you were writing this book to have that personal connection?
I think interestingly, writing the first draft was much easier. I wrote this book in 9 to 11 days. Um, it just it just it just poured out of me. Revising it is where it got harder because a lot of times when I'm writing the first draft of a book, I don't exactly know what I'm trying to say with the story. And so it takes some time for me to realize what the message and the heart of the book is. And but when I finish it, then I can see at the very when I get to the very end, I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And I recognize that a lot of it was inspired by my own grandma who raised me in an intergenerational household. And so I specifically struggled with revisions because in revisions, you're going and refining what you're trying to do in the draft. And so I had to be very intentional about what I wanted to say and what characteristics of Mima I wanted to bring out. And um, I completed the revision process before my grandmother passed away. And I actually got the arcs in the day before her funeral because it was just my dream that she would get to see the book. And so she didn't get to see it and hold it in her hands, but I did like, I don't know if this is morbid, but it was sweet to me. I put a copy of it in her funeral casket. And so it's
Oh,
a deeply personal story for sure. But revising was much harder than drafting. Drafting was just so instinctual because I was just writing all of the nostalgic memories from childhood, not the magical ones because those don't exist, but or do they? But I had a lot of fun just reliving just memories with my grandmother in the kitchen and like the things that she taught me about cooking and what it was like having a mom who worked all the time. And it was just so fun. And I didn't live in the same city with my like I'm from Texas, I guess obviously, and I live here now, but at the time I didn't live here. And so being away from home, being able to write stories at home made it that much sweeter.
I love that. Well, I know that she probably is looking down, loving this book because that
I certainly hope so.
these characters in this book are so fantastic. And I know there's a question coming up from a reader later on, but it's very obvious that this book was near and dear to your heart because it is such
Mhm.
a great family story. You made me get a little teary talking about your grandmother. So,
Yes,
whew.
likewise. Likewise. We're coming up on the 1 year in or the 2 year anniversary next week. So yes.
Well, I'm glad you got to give her a copy to take with her because that's
No,
very
and
special.
it's really sweet to have the book because every time I read it and every time my kids read it, it's like so much of her is on the page, which is
Yeah,
sweet.
I love that. It's like a little memory capsule. So
Totally. Yeah, and people get to like know her without knowing her. So that's
I
fun.
love that. What a great way to honor her and her legacy. So. Well, also in your acknowledgments, kind of touching on that, you have this line in there that has always stuck out to me since the first time I've read this book. I've read it probably 3 times now. And you said in your acknowledgments, I wrote a story that gave my soul what it so desperately needed: sweet, unrestrained laughter, joy. And this story it's full of joy. It's this intergenerational family. It's this friendship. It's this magical story. And this incredible magical world is hidden in Kiana's neighborhood, and she has no idea it exists until her 12th birthday. Can you talk a little bit about how you created that magical world and what inspired some of the elements in it? Because there's some really unique elements in this magical world that I think readers just love. So tell us a little bit about that.
You know, I really wish I had a better answer than I just came up with the wackiest idea I could think of. And I was like, yes, that's what we're going to do. So, ferrets in charge of magical security, that sounds great. Should they have shiny little badges? Yes, let's do that, you know? And so, stoves that spit out pizzas on command and they talk to you and have names, like, yes, all of the wackiest things I could think of. Really, I just wanted to laugh. I just finished writing my YA debut, which was a bit more. just it was just a bit, the story was a bit more trauma oriented. It dealt with racism kind of directly, and so it was just harder emotionally, and so when I was writing this book, I just wanted to laugh. Like, I wanted to laugh, like, until, like, I cried because I was laughing so hard, and so I remember wanting to write a middle grade story about magic, and I couldn't decide where I wanted the magic to exist. And then I realized, well, what if it just exists in her neighborhood? Like, I love the symbolism of that. I love that kids who aren't into necessarily epic fantasy and they read more contemporary stories can step into an accessible magical fantasy world, and they don't have to struggle with visualizing it because it's right in their neighborhood. It's in around the regular places that they see, and there's something very just contagiously exciting about the idea that magic could be in your very regular neighborhood. And so once that idea got a hold of me, I could not let it go. I was like, I have to put magic right in Kiana's neighborhood, in all the places that she passes by, all of the little stores. Like now they like sparkle in a way that they didn't before. And so that sort of brought the setting alive. And then when it came to the magic system, it really was just me trying to be as wacky as possible. I just wanted it to be ridiculous and fun and hilarious, and anything that just felt like a kind of source of a joke, I would run by my kids because I have 3 middle grade readers. My oldest is 12 and the youngest is she just turned 9 like a week, not even a week ago. And so they're all in the middle grade reading range. And so I would tell them, like, isn't this particularly funny? And like one is like, well, what would be funny if blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you guys are hilarious. You guys should write books because they are just so funny. Like the way their minds work are so funny. There's just such boundless imagination in the mind of a younger student or a child, and I wanted to bring that to life on the page. And so that's where you get some of these, really cool things. Like, how cool would it be to change your hairstyle and outfit by putting on a cap? Like,
Right?
that would make my closet space so much simpler and neater and organized and just fun. And so
And
I
much
thought it
more
would be fun to.
sustainable.
Yes, much more sustainable. So I thought it would just be fun to play with silly, fun things and just really push forward. I mean, no spoilers, but at the end there is sort of there is an ending that's like mildly inappropriate. And I almost didn't write it in. It's the thing with the cat. And, I remember asking my editor, I was like, "Is this too childish? Is this not funny at the middle grade age anymore?" And she was like, "I think it's hilarious." She's like, "I read it and I'm, like, crying laughing." And then I told my kids and they burst out laughing. I was like, "Okay, so I guess we can do this." But I just wanted it to be fun up until the last line. So that's what I tried to do.
Well, that definitely translates in, I mean, the hijinks and the sort of the things that happen that are her Miss Magic steps when she's trying to make something happen and it doesn't quite turn out the way she wants it to, you know. And I love the idea of magic is right there in her neighborhood, and when when she finally can see it and she sees some of these people in a new light, that's so incredible. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the is this based on a little bit on the neighborhood you grew up in?
It is. Mhm.
Okay.
It is. Yes, it's very much. I grew up in Houston. I'm not sure where in Texas you are, but I grew up in Houston in an inner city community of Third Ward, which is the same neighborhood where George Floyd is from.
Hmm. Yes, because you dedicated your first book to George Floyd, correct? Or your,
Well, I had already written it when all of that happened, but I added like a page in the end
hmm
for him. But like literally the book was like in production.
hmm
And I was like, if we can stop production and I can just put this little note in there, it would mean a lot to me. And so my publisher made that happen.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that they worked with you on that because that's important.
Yes. Yeah.
But I love this neighborhood. This neighborhood, it felt very real, and I think that I can tell it's a place you've been before. Maybe not with the magic. Maybe I don't know. You
Maybe.
might be secretly hiding it. But it is fantastic, and I love that. And this book is such a fun, joyful read. But you also do this really great job of addressing some kind of harder, more serious topics that our readers might be encountering or experiencing in their own lives, like this educational equity that's going on when her school's going to close because of funding and those lines being redrawn in their city. A lot of self-worth for our characters in this book as they're kind of middle grade kids. That's a that's a big part of their life, is figuring out where they fit in and feeling like they're enough. And even like the intergenerational family, her friendship, not being able to tell nay, like having to keep that secret and hide who she really is. There's so many things in this book, but what is your ultimate hope that our readers take away from this story?
When I think of this book, a lot of as much as my character looks like, as much as Kiana looks like my youngest child, her personality reminds me a lot of my oldest child, who is very introverted, and she feels like math is her nemesis, set out to destroy her. So I was channeling some of that in Kiana as well. And I think the biggest thing is this is a story about Kiana recognizing that she gets to be special and different and good at things that other people necessarily aren't. So her best friend is math club president, and there's a lot of comparison that can happen when you have friends who are naturally good at things that you're not. And I think, like you were saying, at that age is so important that kids understand that they can be good at something different, that they can have their own special thing, and that there isn't one way that you're really, really great. And I thought it was really important that Kiana isn't the straight A student. Because I mean, there are tons of books with straight A students, and hey, I'm all for it. I certainly want my kids to bring home straight A's. But I think there's something to be said about putting the character in the middle of a story as the hero of the story who brings home C's and B's, and school is hard for her, because I think that's a reality for a lot of kids too. And it's important that they recognize that they're not defined by those struggles, those academic struggles, and that they can continue to sort of grow and be proud of other parts of their life. Or maybe the next year they'll encounter a new class that's more their thing, and that it'll be a little easier for them. And so I think self-worth is the heart of it, and that each person is uniquely, um, just gifted with the things that make them special, and I wanted readers to really feel like they can take pride in that, and, like, not not define themselves by other people's value system.
Oh, I love that. Not define themselves by other people's value system. And I think, that's even for us as adults, that's hard to
So hard.
do. And I loved that about this cast of characters. They are all good at different things. Kiana starts to realize, some of the things that she's passionate about and that she's really good at are different, but they're still valuable and they're still important. And she doesn't have to be exactly like Nay or any of or what the expectations of the people around her are. And that's such an important lesson. So I love that. Well, you are a former educator. So when you are writing a novel, whether it's your middle grade or your young adult, how does that experience influence you when you're writing?
I think I recognize from my years teaching that kids are always learning something. They're always learning something, even when they think they're not learning something. They're passively learning things. They're always paying attention. They're sponges. And so I just think that, particularly writing middle grade, it's important to me to be very intentional, about what I'm trying to, um, show through the story and through the main character's journey. What a reader takes away from a book is deeply personal. Obviously, some people will draw on Kiana's journey. Some people will read the book and connect with Ashley or Russ more, some of the side characters, and that's totally obviously great. But I do think that my sort of teaching hat, if you will, slips on, in that I recognize the book is saying something. And so, what do I want it to say? And I think the other thing in that sort of line of thinking is that when I was a teacher, I really realize that kids are aware of a lot more than we give them credit. Like, I think in our when we put on our parent hat, we think that they're still our little babies, and they are certainly little, but they are far from babies, and they know a lot more than I think we give them credit for. They also are deeper thinkers than I think that we give them credit for. And so it's important to me when I'm writing that I don't talk down to the reader. I want my character to seem more mature, than super young, just so that I want my middle grade readers to recognize that I see them, and I know that they're thinkers, and they're creative, and they're paying attention, and they have questions, and questions are okay. And so I try to make sure that I'm writing for the students that I used to teach, that I'm writing to kids who are eager to learn, who are soaking up everything, and who are incredibly capable of processing. In fact, I would argue they're hungry to process all these things that are swirling around in their mind, and I think books give them a great venue to do that. And so I try not to shy away from some of the harder topics like gentrification. I mean, that's very real and it affects a lot of people. And so while I love the fluff, I can't help the teacher in me can't help but put in some of the meatier parts because I am teaching whether on purpose or on accident. So,
Well, I love that. And you said something that I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna write it out and put it on my desk about that they are experiencing these things through these books. And it's so incredibly important. And I think that's why, middle grade literature and young adult literature is so important because our kids get to walk in other people's shoes and experience things and see, as well as see their own experiences. And you do such a great job at touching on these difficult topics that are hard to write about and like convey, I think, to middle grade audience, but in a way that they very much get it. And they're deep thinkers and they understand, and that's why they love your books. So
oh,
kudos to you. This is not a question I sent you, so I'm going to throw it in there. Um, so you were a former teacher, you write young adult, middle grade novels. Have you ever heard from any of your former students that have read your books?
oh gosh, that's so funny. So some of my former students are my Facebook friends, which is really strange for me because now they're like having kids and like getting married. I'm like, wait, am I really that old? Um,
No,
I
you're
was their
not.
elementary school teacher. Um, I guess technically middle school. Fifth grade is in some schools, I guess it's middle school, in some schools elementary. I would say I think two of them reached out after reading Wings of Ebony, which was my debut YA. I haven't I guess because the age disparity, I haven't had anybody reach out that's read this one, but this one's for younger students, and my students are like they're like well into their 20s now, so maybe that's why. Maybe they're buying it for their kids.
There you go. When their kids are old enough, that's a few years down the road.
Right, right, right.
Well, sorry, I had to throw that in because you said we were
Oh,
talking about and I'm like, as an educator, like if I ever wrote a book, I would want to hear from former students who read it. That would be very fulfilling. So, I'm glad a few of them have. Okay, so let's talk about your latest novel came out in August, House of Marion. Am I saying that right, Marion?
yes.
Okay. And it had rave reviews, tons of stars, lots of great reviews. So, congratulations. I know we talked about the flowers behind you are inspired by the cover. It's such a beautiful cover. Um, what are you working on next? And can you tell us about it? And I know you mentioned that tomorrow we're going to get the cover for our second, um, what is it? Park Row Magic Academy series. But tell us what you're
So
working on.
currently, I'm working on the book two in the House of Marion trilogy, and the title hasn't been revealed, so I can't even say much about that. That is definitely a YA book, but it is the book two follows the main character and some other surprise characters into one of the other magical houses, which is really interesting because each of the houses are different, and so you get more than a peek. You get to really step into another house and see how different it is, and there's lots of action in this one. There's more romance. It's very twisty. The prologue has a twist. So
Ooh.
it's a lot of fun. And I just finished up copy edits actually on book two of in the Taste of Magic series. And I imagine by the time this airs, all of that, like the title and the copy and the jacket will be out. So I'll just talk freely about it. But it's called A Whisper of Curses,
Ooh.
and it is a lot of fun because if you've read A Taste of Magic, you know that at the end of the book, the school has come into a lot of money the magic school has come into a lot of money to be able to be renovated. And so while that renovation is happening, I thought it would be fun to do a book kind of in between before we get into like sort of the brand new magic school. And so this book is a week away at basically like a magical camp on an island with
Ooh.
magical kids from all over. And it is still hilarious. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And a surprise for that book is that Ashley is a point of view character in addition to Kiana.
Ooh.
So
How
yeah,
fun.
I'm excited about it.
That sounds so fun. I know our kids are just gonna eat that up. What a fun idea. A magic camp with all the I can't
On an
wait.
island that no one in an undisclosed location. So
better.
because there's being magic being done. No one can know where they are, which is
Gotta be a secret.
inherently problematic because there's like 200 kids there and nobody knows where they are. So that obviously blows up eventually because people need to know where they are and that becomes a problem. But it's just fun and it's silly and there are more just fun magical creatures and all kinds of hijinks. And it's fun to be in Ashley's head because, Ashley is she's more shy than Kiana. She's really, really smart, and her natural gift is available magic. She's really good at interfacing with availables. So we get to deep dive. Whereas book one took us deep into potions, I think book two takes us more into available magic, which is really fun.
How fun. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see this book come out and add it to our club. They're gonna love it. That sounds so fun.
Oh, well, that makes me happy.
Well, I love that. Well, let's get to some questions from readers, which one of them was, do you plan on Kiana and the Park Row Magic Academy becoming a series of novels? So obviously there's a second. Will there be more after the second one?
If you get an idea, I
Okay.
have some loose ideas. So, but for now, we have the second one, which is exciting.
Okay. I love that. Kids will be so excited to hear that. Another reader asked, which character in A Taste of Magic did you relate to the most?
Oh, that's hard. Probably Kiana, because Kiana feels pressure to fix things, and I struggle with that as well. Um, and I was never a super straight A student. I mean, I made some A's, but there were all kinds of challenges that I had with like attention and just there was some instability at home that just made focusing really hard at school. And so I just in my circle of friends, I was probably the one with the B's and maybe a sprinkling of C's. I will never forget in high school, I got a D in English lit. And I think it's because my teacher didn't like me. And maybe that's true, but I wish I could find Mr. Green and tell him that I write books now. I wish I could.
You could send them a stack of
Anyway,
all of them with all
yeah, I
the
was
starred
like,
reviews.
yeah. And did I work my hardest in that class? No, but a D, like
I mean, come on,
really, I wasn't that bad of a student anyway. So yes, probably Kiana.
Kiana. And that makes sense, especially with so much of it being drawn from like your Mima and your family. Like, yeah, it makes sense that you would be the Kiana. So I like that. Okay, so this is I love this question too because I've always imagined what this would feel like the first time you saw your book on a shelf, your first published book. What describe for us what that felt like?
It was well, first of all, when my first book came out, it was the middle of the pandemic. So it was
Oh,
January of 2021. And distinctly remember um, having my book launch virtually and doing all these wonderful events virtually. And I just remember craving, like going to bed that first night, wondering, like, what would it be like to have seen a reader today? It was 2 years before I met a reader.
oh,
But gosh, I still remember that reader's face. I remember what they were wearing. I hugged them with their permission, and it was just a deeply emotional process. But seeing it on the shelf, goodness, that was incredible. It was mind blowing because it's like I had daydreamed about seeing where my book would sit based on my last name and but Barnes and Noble made my debut novel the book of the month for Black History Month, and it was the first Black History Month after 2020. And so it was just a very emotional Black History Month for me personally, and a lot of my community. And so I will never forget walking into Barnes and Noble and seeing its own table. So it wasn't just in a bookstore; it was on its own table with a sign, with like an alternate pretty cover, and it just was unreal. I just remember being in such shock, like this is literally not happening. But if this is a dream, I'm just gonna keep staying in the dream until somebody wakes me up because it was just unreal. It was like yeah, it was unreal. And then the support and love online was I was alone in the sense that we were still social distancing and quarantining, but I felt so surrounded because of my community online that I had fostered over several years writing, but then also in 2020, I feel like everyone was kind of online.
mhm.
And so they had really loved me and surrounded me. And so I felt like they're very much celebrating with me, even though they weren't in person. It was unreal. It is still unreal though. I mean, to be really honest, like anytime I see my book, it is always like, what? In an airport was probably the weirdest. I was walking, trying not to be late to my gate, and it might have been my husband who found it. I'm not sure. But it was just like wild. Like I don't know. It's strange. Like you flip through and you're like, who wrote this? Like when? Who is that person? Like, I don't know. So yeah.
I can imagine it's like an out of body experience, I'm sure, every time you see it.
Completely, completely an out of body
Like,
experience.
this
Like
lives outside of my imagination. It's real. People pick this
it's
up and read it.
it is so bizarre. It is so, so bizarre. But it never gets old. And yeah, I really, really I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity because if readers weren't excited to read it, I wouldn't be writing it. So I'm
Well, thank
grateful for the opportunity and for librarians like you who bring my books to kids because that's like the whole point, like to get it in their hands. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, these are fantastic books. I love your YA books too. Of course, I share those with my older library, my friends who are in high school.
Yes.
But they are, and I can imagine that the work and the heart and the soul and the, blood, sweat, and tears you pour into each book is it's so much more than anyone can know from the outside looking in when they pick it up. So I know you go
Thank you.
through a lot of work to put this out there and to get your story told. So we appreciate it because they're incredible books and our kids love them. So keep writing them, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
I intend to.
good. That's what we want. Well, so our last question is what are you reading right now? If you even have time to read, because obviously you've been
Hardly,
doing stuff.
hardly. I am a serial reader. I'm trying to picture the three books on my bedside table. I remember one of them, but what are the other two? Because I jump around. One of them is Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab, which I'm almost done with.
Mm,
The other one is um clearly I haven't picked that one up soon enough because I'm like I can see the cover, but my brain is like spacing on the name. But I'm in a YA fantasy binge right now. I'm fresh off deadline though, so I don't have a ton of reading time. I actually was thinking of putting fantasy just takes me time because I like to soak it in. So
mhm.
I'm thinking of putting it down and picking up like an Emily Henry, something I can just get in and out of really quickly.
Something light
But
and fluffy.
I jump around, so yeah.
Okay, I love that. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I'm so glad you had time to meet with us and that we could do this. And for everything that you do for our readers, not only just here in Texas, but across the United States and the world. Your books have been translated into many languages. Um, and I can't recommend them enough to everyone who is watching this, not only A Taste for Magic, but Wings of Ebony, and House of Marion, which has a second title coming out. We don't know yet. But they're all just such fantastic reads. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule today to meet with us.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure and my honor. Thank you so much for all you all do and the committee for highlighting this book. Like it is, I mean, you can tell from the acknowledgments, it's deeply rooted. It means a lot to me. And so I'm grateful that it's been giving your students and teachers and staff and committee members so much joy.
Well, I would just want to say also thank you to our listeners, our viewers who are watching today, who joined us today for our Spirit of Texas Author Spotlight with JL. Be sure to check out our Spirit of Texas website for book club activities, read alikes, and more for not only A Taste for Magic, but for all of our books. Or not A Taste for Magic, A Taste of Magic. I switch those pronouns all the time. And all of our 2023 Spirit of Texas books and authors. We will have another episode coming soon to our YouTube channel and our Spirit of Texas website. Thank you, JL, for meeting with us today. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much.